I don't know if you know this, but the rest of the world knew this. You could have taken any job you wanted as a head coach because of how high revered you are by everybody. Why the Washington Redskins?
Well, what's interesting, Pat, was one thing that I did is as I got out of it in Carolina, in my press conference, I told folks, hey, look, I don't want to wait around. I don't want to take a year off. I want to get back into it. I love the game. The game's been outstanding to me. And I just feel I still have a lot to offer. And so as I was going through the process and reflecting, the opportunity with the Redskins came up. And so I had an opportunity to talk to several people that knew Mr. Snyder, and a lot of positive things were said. And then I got connected with Joe Gibbs. And Coach Gibbs and I spent some time on the phone talking. Then I had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Snyder. We talked about certain things. He told me, hey, take a look at our roster. So I started breaking down their roster. I watched some game tape. I wrote everybody I saw on tape. I wrote up. Everybody from the kicker, the long snapper, the punter. I wanted to make sure I got that in there for you. And then I did offense, defense. But then I looked at the roster on paper, and I looked at how young that team was. I looked at the last 3 drafts and the success they had with those players. Those guys were playing a lot of football, and they're playing pretty good, pretty competitive. They worked hard at competing. They didn't win a lot of football games, but they were young guys that played, and I thought that meant something. But then, after sitting down with the owner, talking about his philosophy on things, talking about his vision, the plan, the process, what he saw, what he thought, and then I shared my outlook on things, and we had a great conversation. When I finished with that, I went back and I met with Joe Gibbs. And everything I had talked about with Mr. Snyder, Joe was right behind 100%. We talked about that, and it made me realize that there's a fit there. There's a good fit.
That's so interesting because now you know this. The PR behind Dan Snyder is not always a good one. So, yeah. So I assume that you potentially had in your mind like, hey, I don't know if I could do this. And after meeting him, you had a complete 180. Is that accurate?
I did. I had a complete 180, but also talking to several people that knew Mr. Snyder on a more intimate basis. People that had worked for him, people that worked with him, and people who didn't work with him, but from the outside in knew what was happening. And so it was just interesting to hear their perspective. It really was. And everything seemed to match up. I did not come across a negative person other than people that were with him 20 years ago, 15 years ago. What I heard was all the positive things that people have worked with him in the last 10 to 5 years.
That's awesome to hear, by the way. Can't wait to see you succeed there. To succeed there, you're going to have to make a quarterback decision, right? Dwayne Haskins there played great football at the end of the season. They were giving people headaches. Great teams. They were giving them real headaches. Alex Smith is coming back from an injury. You have the number 2 pick. You have a lot of big-time decisions to make. I assume you haven't been finalized on any of these, but which way are you leaning in that department? Well, hello there. Utilize the promo code PAYTHEBILLS and get $20 off your first order from SeatGeek. Now, back to the magic.
Well, the biggest thing is, and this is one of the philosophies that we carried into when I got to Carolina, and that was we had to ID who our franchise quarterback was. We've got to be able to protect him with a positive offensive line and tight end that can help block, and we had to put playmakers around him. And so that was our plan going forward. Well, looking at what we have right now with the Redskins, the biggest thing we noticed, Dwayne showed some promise. He did a lot of good things as a young quarterback. He was a first-round pick. Reminded me a little bit of our guy that we had in Carolina. Alex Smith, as you mentioned, potentially coming back off the leg. If Alex comes back and he's any semblance of the player he was in the past, we've got a good player there. We also have a good young developing player, which means they're going to create some competition. These guys are going to push each other, help them develop. Alex's history with Patrick Mahomes is outstanding, dealing with a young quarterback, and we could get the same type of situation here. Again, hoping that Alex is healthy and can compete.
You look at this draft, there's a lot of big names at the top, but it's also littered with very talented people. You have a very valuable pick there at number 2. Do you see a lot of work needed to the Washington Redskins roster, or will you take a shot on a big guy, you think?
It's going to be interesting. Everything is on the table. I mean, we don't know what we're going to do with the number 2 pick. We know what's going to happen in front of us. We don't know what's going to happen in front of us. They've got to make a decision first, Cincinnati does, and then we'll go from there. So we're going to take a look at everything. We're going to break it down. We're going to interview players. We're going to scout players. We're going to go to the pro days. We're going to bring them out to see us. We're going to go through the entire process, and we're going to weigh our options. Nothing is set. I mean, our roster isn't set, but I do like who we have. We've got a lot of quality football players that we think if we can add some more, get them to buy into the way we want to do things, have them believe in the system, we have a chance.